If you're in long-term recovery from addiction, is it really wise to take a psychedelic like magic mushrooms for healing? Hi, if you're new here, my name is Ronken. I'm a licensed therapist and a person in long-term recovery. And on this channel, I explore psychedelic therapy and addiction recovery. In this video, we're going to hear from Randy, who is a person in long-term recovery from addiction, and hear how magic mushrooms has helped deepen his recovery. He'll share what life used to be like, and then what happened, and what life is like now.
Because I know there are other people out there that had an arena of struggle in their recovery that they weren't able to penetrate with the standard tools. And I found something that helped me. And it goes outside the boundaries of abstinence-based recovery. And so it's a little scary to enter into. And if there's people out there with those fears, I'd like to chat with them. I'd like to tell them what my experience is. So the struggle, it didn't seem like a struggle in the beginning. I started using when I was 11 years old. I took my first drink at 11 years old, and it was by all regular measures, it was a terrible experience, but because there was 10 seconds of euphoria in that first drink before I vomited, it had a profound effect, and all the negative effects of that experience left me immediately. And so I started drinking at 11, and I stopped when I was 28. So all of those years that I was supposed to be developing emotional relationships, coping abilities, communication inside of relationships, and intimacy, I was hammered. So that's when my struggles began. About the time I was 19, there were inklings that I had a problem, but I was in the middle of a cocaine-induced frenzy at that point, and there was no ability to even recognize what was going to be best for me. It was 28 when I sobered up, and I'd been hospitalized 12 times prior to that in the last 4 years of my drinking. The hospitalizations were increasing in length and coming closer together. I had no ability to cope with getting off of the alcohol and the dope. I had to have medical help. It was that severe. Well, so I'd gone to treatment for the first time in 1984, I think, and that was 4 years before I actually got sober. So I was exposed to AA and other recovery measures. And I'd been going to AA periodically during desperate times since I was 18 and got my first DUI and was sentenced to my first AA meeting. So for a solid 8 years, I was actually going to AA relatively often and trying to recover, trying to stop drinking, but I just wasn't able to get a grip on what they were trying to tell me. And so finally at 28, I had reached yet another bottom. And I went back to the AA group in San Antonio, Texas, and found my sponsor at the time. And I just kind of resigned myself. I'm just going to have to do what these guys tell me to do if I want to live. And that was the difference, I think, is that there was still a spark left in me that was wanting more out of life. It was still there. That was the only thing that hadn't died yet. I did everything they told me to do, and I've been sober ever since. I had 34 years last week, 34 years of consecutive sobriety. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. It's a long time. That's more than half my life. I'm 63. And so I've been sober more than half my life now. So I had been sober for going on 25 years. And there were areas in my psyche or my personality or my soul or my heart, primarily having to do with trusting others and deep intimacy with others, that I could not penetrate. And I'd been working the steps for 25 years. I've been going to therapy for 25 years. And so I started researching alternative therapies, if you will, different medications and things like that. And I came across, the arena of psychedelics, and I'd known about that for some time, but my experience with it in the beginning was just as a teenager, and you eat a handful of mushrooms and go skipping down the beach, and it was fine. You know, it was pretty benign. But when I started reading about the deeper utilizations of it as a ceremonial and a spiritual medicine, I found a psychotherapist that does psilocybin therapy. And we talked quite a bit before I made the decision, and I decided to go ahead and do this. And this was 2 years ago. I thought maybe that's something that I could try. And then this horrible feeling came up. I can't because I'm sober. I can't do that. So that's off limits for me. And because I'd been entertaining that idea, I even had this bit of shame just from entertaining the idea, like I was betraying Alcoholics Anonymous, because I'd been thinking about something that was considered getting high. I was still spooked about my position in AA, you know, where I lived in that hierarchy. And so finding a tribe is pretty important. I found a tribe in AA. Because my whole fucking life, I feel like I'm the only one that feels bad, that drinks like I do, that can't get to sleep, that has intimacy issues. I feel like I'm the only one. And I don't want to say that I moved beyond it, because I haven't. But what AA had to offer wasn't giving me what I needed at that point. And that in itself was hard to admit, because when you get in AA, they tell you it's going to give you everything you need. That's not necessarily the case. That doesn't mean AA is bad. It does have limits. Sorry, and that's heresy. You know that, right? To say that shit. The fucking police are coming to get me. Ah, woo, woo. I had been so indoctrinated in the Alcoholics Anonymous genre of the type that I was exposed to, that said all that stuff is bad, and if you're doing that, all you're doing is getting high. I mean, I felt terrible for 10 years because I was thinking about it. And just like anything else, I had to get to the point of no return, that, you know what, everything I've been doing is not fucking working, and I need to do something else. And I'm going to do my best to walk away from the shame of this shit, which was really hard and scary. And the only way I was able to do that was investigating other people and dropping these little test balloons to see who I can trust and who I talk to. Because I'll tell you this, I told a guy in AA what I was considering. And so he went around to all my meetings and told a bunch of people that story, you know, that Randy wants to go out and do mushrooms and get high and shit. And it hurts so bad. You get too far from the herd, you're going to die. That's what they tell you. And I found out I got away from the herd and I'm not dead. The removal from the tribe was primary. Secondary to that is physiological. How is my body going to handle this? The last time I'd done psilocybin, you know, I was probably 17. This is many years later, and I have had some health issues that are pretty significant and figure into anything that I do at this point. So that was really it, just the physical risk, if there is some. And upon research, there's very, very little physical risk with this. It's pretty benign medication. And you notice the word, I use the word medication purposefully now. So we're here and there's music playing and you know, I'm laying on my soft couch and I've got my cuddly blanket and all this stuff. She made me very comfortable and she sat with me the entire time. And so, you know, again, you know, there's been nothing in my body for 30 years, 30 plus years, right? And so I have taken something, and this is paramount, right? It's frightening because I've had more or less control over my body and what goes into it for 30 years, and I haven't put anything into it that's going to make it get a little wonky. And here I put something on board, and the second I swallow, all bets are off. I have no control. I have committed to wherever I'm going from this point forward, and I didn't know where that was going to be. So it's like the ultimate unknown, and it's really scary for somebody that hasn't had anything in their system for 30 years. And my body rejected. I could start to feel it coming on. It started in here. And it was kind of an energy. And it's like, oh, no. Because the fear is, am I going to hallucinate? Am I going to run around the street naked? Am I going to enter into a complete and utter irreversible psychosis? That's what I was afraid of. Of course, none of that happened. But so what did happen, it's so hard to describe But after about an hour, there was some physical discomfort just because of the energy coming up. And once I got comfortable with that, I could close my eyes and I could see, in a structural sense, my emotional condition. It's like I could see my nervous system suffering. And what she did, it wasn't comfortable. It wasn't devastatingly uncomfortable, but it was like having all of my emotions erupt from my chest all at one time. These enormous emotional upheavals. But what she would do is have me stop when I was having these volcanoes of emotions. She would say, "Randy, stop. Close your eyes. What do you see?" And I could see things. It wasn't a hallucination. It was an internal vision. And I could see my nervous system. And she asked me what it looked like. And I said, "It looks like a gray, quivering mass of bloodless, oxygenless meat that is stressed and suffering." And that's kind of how I felt in a portion of my being my entire life, that there's just something suffering in there. And she, through a couple of more iterations of this welling up and this coming back down into a terribly relaxed state, she said, "Is there anything that would relieve that suffering that you can see?" This was a visual somatic experience. It was all in the body. And I could see that love is the cure. And that's not anything that I could see before. It's something that I knew intellectually, that, I think love cures this problem, but that doesn't mean shit, right? How do I get there? And she said, "Do you have people in your life that love you unconditionally?" And there aren't many. There's a few. And I could see them. And that's a weird thing about psilocybin, is I could locate them. They're over here. My suffering is over here. So I see them both. And she said, "So can we connect the two?" And she says, "You know that they love you." And I said, "It's something I've dealt with all my life. I know they do, but I can't feel it. I can't use it as comfort. It's not there for me. There's something there." And that's the trauma in my life that was choking off the ability to access the people that love me all the time. And so that's what we started looking at, is breaking down this barrier. And we went back into a couple of previously identified traumatic experiences that I had in my life that were stunningly difficult. And these are the things that stunted my ability to trust and love and have intimacy. And what psilocybin did for those is I was able to get right into the middle of those circumstances, the abuse, the sexual abuse, the loss of my little brother when I was 4, right there, and kind of move around in that arena. It's like going back in time. And I'm back there, I'm 4 years old, my little brother's just drowned in the backyard, and there's all kinds of emotional chaos going on. There's nobody talking to me, and I'm scared, and been stuck there for the rest of my fucking life, right there, scared, reaching out, going, "Can somebody please help me understand what I'm doing here on this earth?" And I was able to go back into that stance and literally, to a degree, pull in these people that are in my life now that love me and nurture me in an emotional sense, purely through internal mechanisms. I was able to enter back into periods of extraordinarily disruptive, traumatic, emotional devastation and clean some of that shit up a little bit. Get to know it a little better, how I ended up the way that I ended up, and understanding what the solution to my emotional difficulties are. I can get back there at will, to a degree. I mean, it's happening to me right now. The emotional upheaval in the best sense, what's good for me emotionally, happened repeatedly in those times, in that session. There were difficulties, but there was also what felt like profound emotional victories. And I go back and I just talk about it, and it was so fucking moving. that it moves me now to this day with the same force that it did then, without the medicine inside me. It's created some permanent beneficial conditions inside my soul. That's all I can tell you. I'm a lot more compassionate, a lot more forgiving to myself and to others. You know, it's a broad statement to say it's made me a better person, because that sounds kind of cheap, but it certainly has deepened my insight and my empathy, no question about it. I would not go into it lightly. I approached this with great reverence in the beginning, and I didn't even know how huge this was going to be for me. Now there's even a larger sense of reverence for the plant medicine and what it has to offer. I mean, I had that experience 2 years ago, and this is 2 years later. I would have done it again this year, but I ran into some health problems. But when you consider I had a total 10-hour experience 2 years ago, and the emotional intensity of what I felt from that is still accessible at will, is pretty powerful. So for you guys that are considering this, don't go into it lightly. Be healthy. Be intentional. Know what you're trying to get to. And be ready to ask yourself lots of very hard but important questions. Make a list before you go in. This is what I'm after. And don't go in alone. Don't go alone. Just like climbing a mountain, don't go alone.
So good.
See, every time I tell somebody a bit of that story, I just shake. I mean, it's so powerful for me. The experience was, or is.
Yeah.
So when are you going to do psilocybin?
To stay in the loop of my future endeavors, make sure to subscribe to stay up to date